You know, the exercise which we made you do today was the exercise Loy Khan, the famous architect, gave himself when he was 19-year old. And he wanted to draw light. So guess what he did? Because what all of us, most of us started doing, we started drawing sun or lamp or lights or rays or beams. But what actually is light? So what Loy Khan did, he took a black ink and just dropped it on one corner of a piece of paper, on a white paper. And he says, that's darkness and rest is light. So Loy Khan was a master of, as an architect, he used to play with light. You must have, architects and designers here must have read his case studies and projects where he's done a university like Salk University in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, where he created a water tunnel, a channel, and he positioned it keeping in mind where the sun sets every day, and while the sun was setting, the whole tunnel used to glow. So light is actually, has been having a love affair with architecture for years. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to let Andrea take over, talk about what Matt does, and how mad he is about light, and then we're going to come back to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
But just before that, while mad architects don't really need much of an introduction, but we will do a quick one. So we have Andrea D'Antrassi, who's the Associate European Partner at MAD Architects. They have offices across Beijing, Jiangxing, Rome, Los Angeles. MAD was founded by Ma Yansong in 2004 and has become known around the world for its organically shaped, powerfully technological, futuristic designs. Among its most celebrated accomplishments, now regarded as icons of contemporary architecture, are buildings like the Harbin Opera House in Harbin, China, and the Absolute Towers in Canada. The practice always looks for a connection between architecture and nature, light, of course, being a very, very important, critical part of that, and tries to bring Eastern culture, from which the practice actually comes, together with the Western culture, which is where they are constantly doing these amazing, inspiring projects. Some of the upcoming ones are the housing complex at 71 Via Boncompagni in Rome, and the Phoenix Museum of Migration in Rotterdam, that I'm personally really looking forward to as well. Andrea himself set up the Rome branch of the practice, which now has about 20 people working there.
Yes.
You yourself have had a very interesting trajectory in terms of your geographical movements. So while you grew up in Italy, you studied in Switzerland, and then you went to China while you had a stint with Studio Fuxas, and that's when Andrea fell in love with China. That's a brief introduction of Andrea. Quickly, us. So we are from stirworld.com, which is a digital online magazine that writes about architecture, design, and new media art. But instead of just writing about them, we are very interested in how the three of these intersect with each other, and that's what we inspect. Amit is the founder and editor-in-chief of STIR. I'm the Curatorial Director at STIR. And today we hope that everybody on this stage, and I'm believing in this room, is as mad about light as we all could get. So Andrea, over to you.
Thank you for the introduction. You know everything.
Would you like to start with talking about your team, or?
Yeah, maybe really shortly, or you want to start?
No, I think.
Okay. Yes, Gupta was saying, so hello to everybody. Thank you for having us here. I think MAD loves Milan, and I think Milan loves us as well, because they keep doing work here. So MAD, it's around 180 people around the world. Ma Yansong is the founder of the company. He has studied and worked at Zaha Hadid. So in the project that we will see today, there is a strong interaction between Ma and Zaha, because there is an influence of Zaha with Ma. And after there is Chun and Yoski, so it's a really young office that was born in China around 20 years ago. And after there is Leo, and that it's based in LA, myself, that I run the Rome office. So it's a complex, let's say, organization, but we are all together. And so we try really to push the design in order to find new solutions in terms of sustainability and in terms of creativity. And so basically we work in Asia, Europe, and US, where we are doing a big museum for George Lucas. And in our office that is full of light, we like to talk about the project, we like to share ideas, we like to share knowledge about what is the next experience for living. For us, it's really important to question to ourselves what are the challenges of the future. So this is why our projects are quite futuristic. We try to always have innovative concepts about living space, office space, cultural space. So this is pretty much what we do.
Great, thank you, Andrea. Can we have the presentation of the loop?
And just before we start with our conversation, we really want it to be a conversation with all of you. So please start thinking of questions. I mean, through our conversation, something might emanate. You might already have questions for Andrea. So towards the end of this, we will open up the room for an interaction with all of you and Andrea.
So Andrea, we see a similar exercise as we just did of being the MAD and being the light. And in several MAD buildings, light has been a critical component. How do you visualize your architecture's relationship with light? Architecture and light has had love affairs. Do you romanticize it? Do you make it more romantic? Or do you use it to articulate or manipulate a built space?
Okay. So I think light, it's a key element for architecture. Let's say there is no architecture without light. So light, it's a really critical point that we need to consider in our project. So I think it's a mixture of what you said. So we try to, let's have the light that can be efficient, bring, let's say, emphasize our curves, our complex space that we create. And sometimes we manipulate the light in order to emphasize the space, the experience that we want to show to our let's say, the people that will live our architecture. So for us, it's a, let's say, shaping light is like shaping spaces, because light, it's something that makes the architecture alive. And as you said before at the introduction, for us, for example, Louis Kahn, it's one of our main reference. And so we try to learn from those masters how to deal with light. For example, here we are looking at the Harbin Opera House in China, and you see like theaters in the past were very somehow dark, no? The foyer, the entrance, if you think to the Paris Opera House, they are quite, let's say, dark with artificial light. We open the foyer to really bring a waterfall of light inside the space. Because we want to create, also we like to play with contrast. You enter in a really bright space and after you go to a darker space. So for us it's always to create a journey through the light, with the light. And so this is why for us light has to, let's say, be really well connected with the space, with the interior. It's something that it's a key element again for the architecture.
So, I mean, looking at all your projects and so many other that most of us might have seen around the world, from the likes of the Changi Airport or the Louvre in Abu Dhabi, there are certain buildings where the light itself becomes the identity or the most prominent aspect of a building. And I'm sure it's happened in some of your buildings. And we were just very curious to know, is that a conscious decision that you decide that you will let the light become the identity? Or is it something that naturally happens based on the design of the building?
Yeah. I think it's a combination of both. I think a good architect needs to control almost everything, but also needs that also let the flow goes and see through the experience, through the real life, what will be the, let's say, the end, the conclusion of the building, let's say, no? So we obviously don't control everything, but we try to let's say, communicate to our architecture, our ideas, our values. And so, for example, if I think of some mad architecture, sometimes when there is an important space, we play with vertical light, natural light, and in the night, artificial light, no? Man-made light, let's say. Because it's like in the church, when you go next to the altar, you have lights coming from the top. So we with the direction of the light, with the intensity of the light, we emphasize the architecture. So everything is made intentionally. And for example, in this project in Paris, the architecture, it's this wavy balcony-shaped architecture. And for the facade, we chose really punctual light that doesn't doesn't overlap too much with architecture, but show the lines, show the fluidity of the lines. So it's always we try to control and to don't over-design. Because for us, it's really a balance between all the elements that create architecture. So it's like an Italian recipe of food, no? That everything has to be perfect and with the right ingredients.
Well, as Samta said, identity is very important. I mean, architecture defines identity. Elements used in architecture defines an identity, and light does define an identity. But you're doing projects all over the world, from various geographies, from China to Australia. The sunlight differs in various countries. The cultural context differs in various countries. So how does the cultural context or the natural light or play of natural light in that environment creates the identity?
Yeah. So also, I bring to MED and here my European background to MED, no? And the Latins was calling the context, the area where they were building Genius Loci, no? Before starting a project, you need to know everything about the place where you are working. So in our design process, everything starts with a site analysis, with a sun study. And so before, let's say, put a pencil on paper, we really study the orientation of the building, the amount of light that we can gain. And correctly, as you were saying, because a project in Middle East cannot be the same of a project in Milan or in India. So this is why our work also is so complex. So we try to adapt our concept and our architecture with the place where we work. So for us, it's really important really to understand, let's say, the constraints when we start. And pretty much, for example, in this project in Rotterdam, this is the Phoenix Museum that we are building in Rotterdam. We will see some construction photos. So we decide also in this project to bring a lot of light inside the lobby of the museum. And so we play with our consultant to have the right glass, the right amount of light, again, to reach that balance between natural light, artificial light, to really give a full experience of the space to the people that will come to the museum. So this is, for example, a video that shows how people will approach the lobby. We have this big sculptural staircase that we call the tornado. This is an immigration museum, so the metaphor behind the tornado, it's recall the journey of those people that in the past left Europe to go to the US. And so it's, as you see, materials, facade, lights come all together to create a unique experience. For example, in this case, we talk with the clients in order to have a really reflective still that can emphasize the lights. So even the architecture maybe becomes light, because this architecture, even if it is made of steel, it's quite heavy. With this surface that is reflective, becomes light itself, because doesn't have a texture, so reflects, it's like mirror. And so all these kind of, let's say, thoughts on light create also the architecture in the end.
And that makes me think about, so both Amit and I have some background in lighting design.
Okay.
And we feel that no matter how much consciously you try to design, define,
Yeah.
articulate light, it always still has the potential to really surprise you, especially with the kind of materiality that you were talking about
Yes.
here, right? No matter how
Yes.
much you render and you use all technology
Yes.
to predict what will happen, you do not know exactly what will happen
Yeah.
until it has manifested into a physical form. So, I mean, we do know that light is extremely important to your practice, and we are seeing all these really amazing projects where it's so evident. But if I still have to ask you to probably share with us one project where you felt that the use of light, artificial, or maybe harvesting of natural light was done in the most innovative way, and you were like surprised and very happy with what came out, which one would that be?
I must say that I don't have only one, but maybe this project, the tornado project, it's one of them, because here also again the challenge is that everything has to come together, no? And I think a good light in architecture, it's where you don't see the light source, like you don't feel where the light is coming from, no? Because otherwise, also, if you see directly the light source, it doesn't work, no? If you see how we combine the light here in the tornado, we play also with our team, we make a lot of tests, we made mock-up how to combine the light inside the balustrade of the tornado. And there were many angles to study because people come from the lower part, and so they were seeing at the light source, no? And so we shape the tornado, we change the details in order to really give this idea that the light is there, but you don't see where it comes from. So here you see details, and so from the bottom, from the top, those are the detail of the mock-up. And there were also different study about the quality of light. If it has to be colder, warmer. And so this is why this project, it's really important from us. And from each project we learn actually the next solution, we learn how to improve our system. So, and as you said, in the end, an architect doesn't know the final result until the end of the project. So this is why we always say to our client, because they are asking, we live in an image society, everybody is asking for image, no? And so the client is saying, okay, can you show me this render? Can you show me these let's say, drawings? But in the end, you will never know the final result without seeing the truth. This is why we always ask clients to build mock-up one-to-one to see the real effect of the light. So I think for me that it's really important to don't think only about renderings and images, but go there, see the real product, talk to people, gain from other experience. Otherwise, our job really becomes really, let's say, poor. So we need to emphasize and ask clients to do mock-up, to invest in the real material, in the real materiality of the project.
I actually want to go back to one more point Samta was trying to make, was harvesting light. Now, daylight harvesting has become a very critical science these days. There are specialists like Bartenbach or Spears and Majors who deploy a lot of studies of and solar movement and how the daylight is changing. Have you deployed an agency in any of your projects where daylight harvesting became a critical tool for sustainability, the critical tool for making sure that there is, when you apply for ratings and green ratings and multiple green ratings, there's 1 point given to daylight harvesting and there's 1 point given to light pollution. Now, daylight harvesting is becoming a very important norm and science and art. Have you practiced that? Have you deployed any agency in any of your projects?
So we always work, I think, I always say that after the structural engineer, because the structural engineer needs to make the structure to support our project, lighting designer is the most important consultant. In our office, many architects come from Fuchs's office in Rome, And Fuchs has always worked with spears and measure. And at MED, we always try to, this is our policy, let's say, to always change the consultant. To really, because as I was saying, from each project we learn a lot, we gain a lot of know-how. So we always try to change different, let's say, professional agency to have the right approach. So we always, also with them, we start a dialogue how to improve the sustainability, the livability of our office space, residential spaces. So it's again, as we start this conversation with landscape architects, with other consultants, so we really talk a lot with lighting designer. Because also now, as we know, sustainability is so crucial in our projects that without the expertise of our consultant, we couldn't deliver the right project. And for example, this is a problem in Italy. I have to say that sometimes the clients are not educated enough to let's say, manage complex projects and understand how architects need other professionals that need to support us. So we need to, beside our work on designing, for example, for me as head of the office, I need to convince the client that we need a good lighting designer. So I think, for example, because we worked in many countries in Europe, France is much more developed in this sense. When they start a project, they have a good architect, good lighting designer, good sound designer. In Italy, we need to still communicate how important is the light, because light is not just decoration. It's architecture is much more. And so I hope that in the next years, the templates will be different and clients will be more ready to make a holistic team that can approach the complexity of the project.
And what are your views on light pollution, keeping the same sustainability in mind? And long back, Vegas stopped lighting up the facade because Vegas and Hong Kong, if you see that bright lights on the facade, birds losing migratory tracks, or kids can't see a Milky Way because of the fact that there's so much haze in air. And today there's a lot of focus being given on, especially when you do public buildings and spaces which are interacting with a larger audience. Light pollution is becoming a concern everywhere.
Yeah.
And light pollution also has dictated by the cultural dynamics of the country you're creating an architecture. Has that been a point of concern while you're evaluating and designing the spaces?
Yeah. So we have seen before, for example, the project that we are doing in Rome, and in the big city, the comfort not inside the building but on the street, on our urban scale, it's really important, no? And so each country is taking regulation about lighting, pollution, and all these things. So also in this case, we always are supported by specialists that tell us what are the best solutions that we need to take to reduce the amount of light that we give to the city that it's not needed, let's say. And so it's a really crucial point. So what we do is most of the time also to take a certification lead well, you need to have a list of constraints and things that you need to follow. So also this certification help you to take the right decision. And so in that case, how to enlighten a facade, it's really important to emphasize the architecture without, let's say, over design the light. It's really important. And so this is also in all our projects, especially in Europe, we consider that point, how to design the facade without, let's say, make too much noises around.
And I think taking it forward from what the two of you were just discussing, we spoke about harvesting light, sustainability, how you, in your architecture, you're so conscious about what you do light. But most of your works, because they're also so sculptural, we wanted to deep dive a little bit here and talk about how it is one thing that you design how the light enters the building, but also looking at your sculptural works, it's about how the light falls on the building and gives it that sculptural quality. And we are very keen to know if you could articulate how do you think about these two aspects of light, getting the light in and letting it render the building.
Yeah. For example, I'm looking at this installation that we've done in Milan, no? And I think, as you said at the beginning, our architecture, it's organic. We get inspiration from nature. And so what you are saying about how the light entered the building and how enlight the surface of architecture, for us, maybe all these elements merge together. Like if you see this installation, it's like moving, it's alive. So we like to create this kind of experience, and you can see in all our projects that the lights try to really bring a new life to the architecture. So this is why it's moving. We try materials that are flexible, that are, so this kind of reflection that you are saying, and how the lights hit the surface, for us it's really important. And so it's a really holistic approach that we try to do. Even here, like in this method, we try to have a lot of sample in the office, study the texture of the material, and really it's all about studying the reaction of the light on the materials. This is why, for example, for important projects like the Lucas Museum in LA, we were questioning ourselves, I don't know, should be stone, should be aluminum, white aluminum, should be marble, because each material gives a different reaction. And so we are like, let's say, we work a lot with parametric design. So in our brains, in the team brain, in this collective brain of the office, we try to consider all those elements to choose the best material that can react with light. So this is why also in our office we always change the concept. Like the clients are quite always upset with us because we are keep changing the concept, we are keep changing the material, because really, as you were saying, we test, we see the reaction, we see what is the best, let's say, solution.
That was a beautiful installation. If any of you have not been to University of Milan, you'll see this large-scale installation up there, designed by Andrea.
Yeah,
Don't miss it. It's beautiful. It's also, as we were talking about how light falls on the building, or how the sculptural installation actually embraces the entire architecture of University of Milan and brings in this particular installation. So compliments to that. Was awesome. Yeah.
So we'd also like to focus a little bit on you now. We've spoken about the practice, and you're integral to the practice. And we were, like I mentioned earlier in Andrea's introduction, that he's had this whole geographical trajectory. And we were and you also mentioned that how you bring in this Western perspective to, kind of merge the Eastern and Western knowledges at your work. Could you expand a little bit and tell us about your experiences with architecture and light across these different geographies?
Okay, really, really big question. I think I can talk about China, because I spent a lot of time in China. Before working at MED, I was working at Fuxas, and he did an amazing, and I was working at the project, the airport in Shenzhen, that it's a skin totally open, full of lights. And so I think each country has a different approach towards the light. And so I think in China, people like to be somehow shocked about the light. So each solution has to be special, has to be also changing during the different hours of the day. Because really Chinese like to be really stimulated by the light. So I see this kind of, let's say, interest to the light that has to be wow somehow. In Europe, I think we are more, let's say, stable. We like I don't know, elegant solution that can adapt during the day, but not with so many peaks in terms of intensity, in terms of colors. And I see, because now, for example, this project in Rome is an office building that, for example, in Europe, we are really keen to work on lights that work for office space, how to deliver a good office that can guarantee the right amount of light in the working space. It's really important. So I think that light, it's really connected to also the work environment, because also with COVID, with many changes that we had through the last years, it's really difficult to find the right working space, the right working spaces. So light is one of the main, let's say, elements that also certify the quality of a working environment. So a lot of research, a lot of study goes into working areas. And so this is what I see now in between also different spaces, different areas also of the world. Like the more scenographic lights in maybe in Asia, and more, let's say, technical and related to work environment in Europe.
So light not only just articulates a built environment or renders a space, it also articulates or manipulates and architecture, but it also has a very important role on articulating a human mood. You know, how does it affect our own mood when we are in the space, which is light or no light, darkness or no darkness. Darkness is equally relevant as we did the exercise. I mean, if there's no darkness, there's no relevance to light. Sometimes when we are designing a space, when you're building a space, you're also looking at the audience, who you're designing it for. And the way the human behavioral pattern is shifting, the way the current generation and the next generation has been living in indoors mostly, and stuck to the
devices.
To devices and blue screen, and then suddenly they are exposed to a space. I mean, they come here, or they go to any lobby, or they go to any public spaces lobby. The tweaking of human mood can be done by not just the way space is designed, but the way space is lit. You know, and I don't know what your views are on this, but I feel today most of the spaces where which can evoke an emotion, light plays a critical role in evoking that emotion.
Yes, I think it's absolutely like that, but it's also, I think, more, because I think your question is related to future. I think I see, I see architecture as complexity, and the future is bringing us to consider complexity integrated in the building. So I see that in the future, our facade, our architecture will become like, let's say, the skin. So with the skin, it's the biggest organ in our body, no? So, and the skin tells us a lot about the environment. It tells us if it is cold, it tells us if it is warm. So I think the architecture will go in this direction, that through some devices integrated in the architecture, in the facade, with the data collection, we will know what people want, and the architecture will adapt itself to respond to the sentiment of people and to the environment around. So in the future, I think the architecture will become really like a skin that, or like an eye that will collect a lot of information and react to those information. And this one will bring much more quality to, let's say, energy saving, because if we have smart facades, smart glass, the glass could change according with the actually with the environment, with the weather, and the same thing, the light, the artificial light could change according with the actually with the environment and with the condition outside. So this is why I think architects needs to do a lot of research on this, because it can help to control the waste of energy, the waste of materials, and in the meantime, it can improve the experience. Because I think now all architecture is about experience, how you feel a building, and lights play a key role, and lights also bring us to many other topics, because light, as we said, it's so important, they control many aspects of the project. This is why I think our effort will be to play with these big teams that can control the complexity of the buildings in all those aspects. So let's say, with the data collection, with analysis of the data, we could create much more complex building that can adapt according with the necessity.
I have a follow-up question for that, but we can keep talking to you forever. I would at this point like to ask if there are any questions in the room. We can probably take one or two. Are there any questions in the room? Yes, please. Please do introduce yourself before you ask the question.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Youssef, architect designer from Algeria, North Africa, for the one who don't know the country. It's between Morocco and Tunisia. So I'm very honored to be here and listening to this very inspiring talk. So I have the following question. You said that when you have a project in different regions or country, you try to adapt. Please, is there a process of adaptation you use to inject your project? And especially, how do you approach the social impact of the project? Thank you.
Okay, so how we adapt, so I think, I don't know, at least for MID, we try to do a study of the place, and this one drive us to a certain concept that are related to the place. So for example, I don't know, in an environment full of light, full of really hot, we will try to develop a concept with some green, some canopy that can block the lights. And as I said before, also the materials play a key role. So at the beginning, we also already try to play with the right materials that can be a little bit more sophisticated, because we, as I said before, we try to push the research on materials. And so for example, I don't know, we like to build with natural material like wood or others. And so we try really to start from to the place to understand the right material and the right approach to the project. And the second question?
The social impact.
Social impact. We are always open to discuss about the concept. We had a really good, for example here in Milan, we were called to reimagine 5 big areas in Milan, and together with the clients, we develop a system to do workshop with people to understand the needs of people in that community, and with them, we develop the program. So I think also now the architecture is going to this participative process that for us is really important. Also for the project in Rotterdam, we asked the client, and the client was happy to say yes, to leave some space on the ground floor to the community, like a flexible space that can leave the freedom to the people of the neighborhood to come to, let's say, manage their own space and, let's say, build their own culture, building their own identity. So we always try to leave some part of the space flexible in order that the community can take over. And so I think through program organization of the project, through the dialogue with the local community, we can reduce the social impact of our project. So this is what we try to do. I think mainly involve the community on the design process and also leave some spaces for the community.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Or we will continue with... Sure, please.
Is there water bottle?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Nila from Polemy student, and I have one basic question. Like, ma'am was asking how you incorporate your light inside your buildings. So how exactly you handle you change materials along the projects, and you must have faced some reflection issues which can be a negative impact on the
Yeah.
surroundings. So how you analyze, and can you just give us your experience over it? And
Yeah, for example, we had this problem. I think this is a really good question because we had, for example, for the tornado, we had problem of reflection, or also sometimes light can be concentrated in one point and can create really big problem. So again, through big consultant that support us, through 3D model, we can study those kind of reaction, and so you take action on this point. So for example, the tornado was casting some really intense light to some part, to like, let's say, neighborhood buildings and also on the floor. So we took some solution, like for example, to send in some area the stainless steel in order to avoid those problems. So before we were saying that you never know the result of the building before the conclusion of the construction site. But I think also that a lot of study can be done ahead of the conclusion of the project to solve this kind of issue. And a good office that managed complex project knows how to deal with this problematic. And so we faced also this kind of project, and we know how to, let's say, to solve it and how to react.
Thank you for that question. Just going back to,
Okay.
before we come to a close,
Yes.
because we are about at time, but I wanted to go back to the previous discussion we were
Yes.
having. And you brought up the word future.
Yes.
And of course, I mean, we all know that architecture outlives us. Architecture outlives people who inhabit it or who it was built for, and the people who designed. So when you're designing the buildings at MAD, how much far ahead in the future are you thinking? So are your buildings, like, are you imagining this is live 100 years, and probably the evolution, the social, environmental situations would, evolve in such a way, and hence this will live like that? That's one. And the second is, what is future to you? If you could respond to that.
It's a big question. Future of light or future in general?
Future in general.
So about what is the future, I think I think this time we need a really positive message. I think we need to be positive, and I think so. Architecture is to be a tool to bring, let's say, good ideals and values to people. So this is why I was talking about social impact. No, an architecture that can bring quality to our cities, I think is the key point. Like we see now Milan, for example, doing this festival of design, that it's open to everybody. So I think, I hope that architecture will never forget its first challenge, that it's to bring quality to people. So I think we need to work all together in this. Maybe don't build architecture just for few people, but for everybody. I think MAD, for example, complex architecture can be expensive, so we know that this is a point. But MAD always try to also minimize the concept in order to bring quality to spaces, and I'm talking about in a urban level, not for private project, no? For example, also in Milan, we are working close to the fair, like in a neighborhood that is called Mind, and in there we chose solution that can minimize the impact of these big volumes that we need to build, bringing quality. And so I think this is the future, how to bring quality in urban sense to people without, let's say, make too expensive projects, but still keeping this, for example, in our case, the soul of MAD. So we need to make this kind of step forward to conceive an architecture that is for everybody, because I think architecture is an element like I like poetry, like paintings, that can really bring people together. And art is so important. And also at MAD, we think that there are no boundary between art, architecture, light, everything comes together. So I hope that the future will be about that, engage people. And now with the artificial intelligence, everybody becomes architects somehow, no? Everybody can do a concept, but I think architects has the expertise and the skills to build those kind of dream that we can create with computers and with a simple device. So I think this is why our role will be even more important, even more, let's say, crucial in our society. So this is how I see.
Thank you.
Thank you. I mean,
Sorry, just last chance for any last questions. There's one there in the corner.
Hello, my name is Elias, and I'm working on the future habitat of human in cities with Emrad. My question is related to social a bit. So designing acupuncture architecture is something, but working on social habitat is something else, and the challenges are different. And then when you take example in China, for example, you see this acupuncture architecture, fantastic, speaking about light, but then where you see the dance area where people live in small pixels where barely there's light going, it's another reality. So the question would be, what do you think, in your opinion, is the recipe for that? How could the architecture even respond to the majority of the people that do not take part of this acupuncture architecture, or they come to it once a year or whatever?
Yeah, so also this is a really important question. And I think when we judge, for example, China, we need to see where they come from. So we talk from like about a country that in the last 30 years made a big jump towards the future, towards innovation. And so mad that 80% of our projects are in China, always try to talk to both realities, like, I don't know, big developing, big numbers, but also to small reality. For example, there is one of our projects that is called the Hutong bubble, that is just a bubble that is inserted in the historical fabric of Beijing, and through that small elements, we could improve the life of these small houses that are in the city center of Beijing. So in our approach, we try, let's say, to solve problems through design. And so one of our main goal is to reach this result through design. So this project, the Hutong bubble, through a small elements, we could bring services to people, like a bathroom that was missing, a kitchen, a staircase that will be able to reach the second floor of the house. So we think that if there is the intention that maybe most of the time comes from politicians, from maybe big developers, big stakeholders, we can really, through design, change the life of people. So this is also what we are trying to do through small-scale projects. I don't know if I answered to your question properly.
Mind emphasizing, please, on how to find the balance as well between the light into these small homes in relationship to the economy, because as well everything comes through the economy. As you're saying, there's a political influence and there's the money that plays a role. So materiality is not the same like in big project, but also
it's what I said. I think what I have tried to say is that a low-tech solution that can be less expensive can bring the same quality, so you don't need always to look for the latest material, for the last performing material. I think, now there is the tendency to go back to natural stone, to wood, to bricks, because they are maybe the materials that are coming with the humans since 20,000 years. No? So the same things happen with light. You don't need to always look for the same sophisticated solution to bring quality, no? But it's how you combine them, materiality, lights, and so you can still give a lot of quality to those environmental spaces without like huge budget. And I think a good architect knows how to deal with the slow budget to bring quality. So coming back to the also original material, also simple light source. And so I think through this kind of study as well, we can reach really, really good result and again, change the life of people.
Thank you so much for that question. And the prompter is saying end talk, so we really need to end this. Just one last reflection from you as a conclusion. Referencing our context, we are at Euroluce, which is the city of lights. And I don't know if you've had any chance so far to walk around.
Not yet, but I will.
Do you have any reflections about Euroluce and this whole initiative that we are here together having this conversation?
No, I think it's so we missed Euroluce for a few years, so I think it was the right moment. And as we said, as everyone agrees, light is so important. They take inspiration from the company that are here. For us as a designer, it's really important. So this is why, even if it was a really intense week, we kept some time in our schedule to really work here and see also the innovative solution to bring to our project. So for us, the good things of a space like this is that maybe in few hours you can take inspiration, you can see the last products, and so this is why I'm looking forward to start this journey.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody.